float, and I run it, and I should get a float there as well. See? So that is typecasting for float. However, now for this to work, it has to be a numeric value. Okay. If I say some and I put a as a string, or let's say, actually let's try that, because sometimes Python might be smart enough to know that, okay, this is a number. So I can try and convert that. So let's try that. And we run, and it was able to do that. Okay, so when you have a number in a string, Python can do that. Well, essentially, that's what we're getting to, because remember, when we're putting something in a terminal, we'll get a string out. So Python is able to do that. But what I wanted to tell you that is, if you have a string that's not a number, right? Not a number, and you try to do what? You try to convert to a float. What's Python supposed to do with this, right? This is a string, not a number, right? What did I just, okay? And then I say, there should be an error, all right? Not a number, can't convert a string to a float. Even if I was to say, let's see if Python is smart enough, 5, that's a string of characters. How is it? It can't do that, right? So just be careful, be aware of that. So it needs that numeric value as a string for it to work. Okay, I put in 12 and I run that. This should work, and it converts it to a float. Now, that's for the float conversion. If you want to do for int, it's essentially the same thing. I'm going to redefine a, right? Or let's say b, or is now 12.0. That's a float, right? And I'm going to say b int is equals to int of b, right? And if I hover over b int, it should be like, you see, it is now an integer. But like before, let's just be sure. Type b int, b int, close that bracket, and we close another bracket, and we should be good. And we should see an int at the end there. So that's how you convert. So now that one is for converting into integers, and it works the same for strings. See, there is a string, but Python will be smart enough to know that that is a numeric value, and it will convert. Oh, okay, guess not. So that's an error. And if we do that, so that is how you do that. But if you want to convert a float or a string to a float, right, you would have to use the float, because if I put that 0, that's a float string. But Python doesn't seem to be able to do that. It says invalid literal for int with base 10, 12.0. So for that to work, if you wanted to, you would have to now say, I want this to be a float. So it's called method chaining or function chaining in this scenario. I am going to first convert it into a float. And then from there, I'm going to convert it to an int. So let's see if that works. And that works. But from a string representation of a float to int doesn't work. So you have to go from string representation of a float to a float and then to an int, okay? And so let's say now you want to convert, we've done float to int, we've done float, this was a float, and we've converted it to an int, okay? But that's actually, well, this is a string. So we converted a string to a float and then to an int. Let's try something where we convert int to a string. Right, so we have a is equals to 5. And I'm going to say n is equals to string of A. And then we're going to print type of N. And we should get a string, right? There we go. Okay. There we go, string. And let me just clear our terminal again. So that's to convert an int to a string. Now, converting a string to an int, how do we go about that? Essentially, like I think we just did that before, remember? And this would now become an int, right? So now how do we do convert a string to a float? We've done that, convert string to float. And we say A is equals to 5.7 or 5.2. And we say print type of, I'm converting a string to a float. So I'm going to say float, and I'm going to say A, okay? I hope that does not confuse you. If it does, I'll explain it next. And we see we have a float. So now this, let's quickly break that. Essentially what I'm saying, let me not comment that out. I'm saying, okay, instead of saving this value into a variable, could have just done C is equals to that, right? And I would have just put that C there and we'll work and it will get the same thing, float, right? But sometimes you don't want to defining variables unnecessary. So I could just put that back there, move the C and run that and it will still work, okay? Float. Now, where were we before? We were calculating the trip for a distance, how much it would cost for a trip based on the distance and the fuel economy of the car. So now let's create a program that's going to get those values from the user. See you now. Oh, okay. So let's get back to it. Now we're going to create an input-output trip calculator, right? So before we do that, I will just quickly write some steps that we'll go through, right? So, well, essentially pseudocode, all right? We're gonna greet the user, the flow of the application, ask the user for their name, and then we're gonna ask the user, right? And refer to the user using the name that they just inputted, where they are traveling, right? From there, we're going to ask the user, what is the distance to where they are traveling, right? And then ask the user for their car economy. And just to be specific, in this scenario, I mean the rands per kilometer of their car, right? Normally we do liters per kilometer, per 100 kilometers, but if there's a way you can get rands per kilometer if you know how much fuel is and also how much fuel you spend over a certain period of time, you can get that ratio out. But let's not go deep into that right now. So then we're going to ask the user for the price of fuel, all right, current fuel. Today I went to the garage and it's gone up again, but yeah, we'll be fine. And then we're going to return the cost of the trip, right, to the user. and return in terms of to the terminal output to the terminal. And if we forgotten this is the terminal, so let's just clear it. Okay. So let us begin. Let us begin. Let us begin. Like a good programmer, it's good to start with some comments. So we're going to greet the user. And we're going to get print good day, all right? But now it's basic. When you get more advanced, you can decide, depending on the time of the day, use either good evening, good night, or good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, okay? But let's just continue. And then we're going to use the input function, remember, to collect the user name. Now I'm going to say username. Remember the rules for the variables, they must be relevant to what we're doing. And I'm going to put in the prompt, what is your name? Okay. And then I'm going to put in this funny symbol. Essentially, this is an escape sequence or escape character. And what I want to do, what this does essentially, it ensures that we jump to a new line. So when you see it, if we just run actually, the cursor of the terminal will be on a new line. And let's just see there. What is your name? And I say Oselu, but it's not going to say anything right now. Okay. So let's say ask the user where they are traveling to. All right, destination. And remember, we're going to use their name. Now, there's something in Python called f strings, right? And essentially, it allows me to put in this literal, the value stored here that I put in here, and I can input it into this string. Okay, so I'm going to say, where are you traveling to? And I say, you do that using curly braces, and you put in the name of the variable. And I escape. No, I do this, and then I escape again. And let's see if that would work. Yes, what is your name? And where are you? Oh, yeah. John. Where are you traveling to? John, I see. Gives it a bit of a personal touch, and I say I'm traveling to East London. Those of you in South Africa. And that's the end of the program, okay? And then I ask, what's the next step? Ask the user what's the distance to where they're traveling to, right? And we're going to use the input function. Ask the user for the distance to where they are traveling to. All right, now let's say distance. Destination is a bit long-winded, but forgive me. Say input, and again, we use the F string. And this time I'll use single quotes just to switch it up a bit. What is the distance to, remember, curly braces, name of the variable, and in kilometers, so that that is not ambiguous. Okay. We are in South Africa and we use kilometers, but distance, right? And then we can write it again. So what is your name? I say, John. Where are you traveling to, John? I say, East London, eh? Oh, what is the distance to East London in kilometers? And I say, okay, 521. All right, 521. Great, that's the end of the program. So now we have 521. Now, what we can do here, we can do it here. Or actually, you know what? Let's just continue. So we're here now. We've asked the distance. Let's ask the distance for. Let's ask the car economy. We can say, ask the user for their